Fun little wet fly today. This is the Cassin. I think it's pronounced Cassin as opposed to Cason. It's a interesting brook trout fly. The history of it is a little bit vague. There's a person by the name of Eric Austin, gentleman in Ohio, who did a nice bit of research on this fly. And as is the case in a lot of these, it's still kind of hard to tell just where the fly originated and who created it and so on. But I'll leave a link in the description down below to his article on it. It was just rather interesting to read. But this is was a very popular brook trout fly for a while. It's just your standard kind of wet fly. The one interesting thing is the tail has some peacock sword in it, as well as the goose quill segments. I just like the colors on this. They come together very well. So that's the Cassin. I'll get started. Start the Cassin by placing my hook on the vise. This is a Mustad 3399, a size 4. I'll debarb the hook. And then I'm going to attach my thread because it's a yellow floss body, and I'm going to start with the Danville 6/0 in white. I've already put some wax on the thread. Start my thread about an eye length behind the eye of the hook. Just advance it down, putting a base layer of thread all along the hook shank to just past the point of the hook. There is a tip on the Cassin, and it is gold tinsel, and I'm going to use a Danville number 14 in gold. I'm going to attach that with the silver side up. Then get 3 to 4 wraps continuing down the hook shank. Bind that in, turn the hook over. I'll get 4 to 5 wraps down the hook shank, down the bend to put in the tip. Tail on this fly is what really caught my eye, because it's not just your regular duck slip or quill slip type tail. I am using some red goose quills in this, but it has peacock herl in it as well. Not herl, I'm sorry. It's peacock sword. So for this size hook, I'm going to go ahead and take just 3 of the barbs off the peacock sword. If I were tying this smaller, I think it'd be only 2. It's not super pronounced, but you want enough in there to be noticed. I just like the peacock sword. It has some really, really nice colors to it, and I think it just really stands out, adds a lot to a fly. I'll attach that. The sword's going to be about a shank length long. The tail, I'm just taking some goose quill, red scarlet goose quill. The only caveat to tying this tail in it, and this is just how I do it. I looked at a number of pictures, and there's 1 or 2 videos out there that I've seen, and my question originally was, is the Scarlet put in and then the Peacock curl tied in afterward, or the other way around? I found that I like it this way better by putting the Peacock sword, rather, I'm sorry, I said hurl, the Peacock sword in first, and then bring your slips over, spread them apart, and then bring them down so they actually come down and kind of form a tent around the top and around just down the sides of the hook, so that when you tie that in, it sort of kind of covers up the base of that hurl, and you just get this nice, almost covering kind of the hurl. So the hurl looks like it's just, excuse me, I keep saying hurl, but the Peacock sword just kind of comes right out from in the tail. Trim away the excess. The rib is the same as the tip, the same Mylar tinsel, so I'll tie that in with the silver side up. The body is a yellow floss. I'm using a Danville 4-strand rayon in yellow. I'm going to use all 4 strands for this fly. I will bring that up under the thread over to my side. Bring that back the length of the body. Bind that in. Put a little bit of wax on my thread, and now I will advance my thread forward so that I can put in the body as well as the rib. Stop about an eye length behind the eye of the hook, and I shall apply the yellow floss and the gold rib. Body is all done, and I'm ready to change over my thread. I'm going to change over to a 6/0 Danville in black to finish the fly off, and we'll tie in the throat and the wing. Throat is just a brown hackle. I'm going to use some brown Schlappen. I'm going to take a nice full feather, strip away all the fluff off the bottom here, and then I'll take probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 3/8 of an inch wide, I guess. Depends on the size hook. I'll take a little from one side, and then I'll peel off. Notice I'm getting these, separating these out from the rest of the feather and getting these 90 degrees to the rachis so that all those tips are fairly even. Peel that off, and then I'll lay that right on top of the other side. And essentially that just gives me, the two sides concave in each other will give me a nice full slip of barbs for the throat. Put those up underneath the hook. I like the tips to come back about to the barb of the hook. A little pinch and loop from underneath. 3 or 4 wraps to secure that in, and our throat is done. The wing on the Cassin is just yellow. I'm going to use some Goose Quill for this. If you were doing this in a smaller size, say an 8, 10, or 12, go ahead and go with some duck. But I've got some yellow goose here. Got a left and a right. Already cut those slips out, so I will separate them. I've got one side in my hand here, and I take the other side where I've cut that off of the quill, and I just match the ends of those up, and I can peel that right off. I want to make certain my tips are even first. I like to go ahead and bring the top edge of both of those even, because then I can see very easily if the tips here are nice and evened up. Moisten your fingers a little bit and get those to slide on each other. Once I get those tips done, I will take a look at it and see. As you can see, this slip on my side here is wider than the other one. So I will, and it's actually wider than it needs to be as well. So I'll reach in here with my bodkin, and I'm actually going to take 1 or 2 on my side, or the narrower side, off as well, just to narrow the whole wing up just a little bit. I like it to be about anywhere from half to 3/4, maybe, the gap or the full gap, but I don't like it much wider. With those evened up, I'll get it so that the tips are about halfway down the tail. Securing that in place, get a pinch and loop, slowly draw that down. Get the throat hackles out of the way. Another pinch and loop to secure that. And then we'll take a look at where it's at. I want to make certain my thread is at the rear portion of the head, not right behind the eye of the hook. Otherwise, when I trim the waist off here, I'll end up with the head gets too bulky up here. Uh, it gets kind of a quick drop instead of a nice smooth taper. And we can take a look at our wing. We're happy with that. We'll trim away the excess. Use my reach. I know you can't see what I'm doing here. See, if I had these thread wraps right here too far forward up behind the eye of the hook, then all of this is going to get cut off a little bit further out over the eye of the hook. Whereas here, I can get a nice taper from behind the eye of the hook back and get a nice shape to the head of the fly. So bringing my thread forward, I'll start to wrap from behind the eye of the hook backwards. I want to make certain I'm covering up any yellow. Once I have that done, I'll flatten the thread out. Get a 9 or 10 turn whip finish in here. Trim away my thread. Some head cement on this to soak down in there and secure it, and then I'll come back and put a couple of coats of black lacquer on there to cover it up, finish it up, and make it look really nice. The Goose quill that I have is not the best in the world. It's funny, most of the barbs are okay, but I get these little ragged ends right here on some of these. Now the other feather that was matched up with it is really nice and smooth, but as a fishing fly, I would not concern myself with it. As a framing fly, I think it's passable, but that's me. So there is the Cassin, a wonderful brook trout fly with an interesting history. Just a fun fly. It's a little bit different, like I said, the tail having the peacock sword in the tail just makes this a little bit different, but the colors also work really well. The yellow, red, and green really kind of go together pretty well. So that's the Cassin. Thanks for watching today.
Thanks for joining me at Devise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help dressed irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.